Welcome to Jerry's Live. I'm Amy Gardner-Dean. I'm your host for Jerry's Live. Today's episode is JL 120. We are going to be talking about composition. How the heck do you evaluate your subject and try to make it more dynamic so that your artwork comes out all that much better? Composition is something a lot of people don't think about. It's kind of the last ditch thing that you may not even really put forth any effort on. And unfortunately, that really shows in your artwork, especially if you're trying to get into shows, if you're trying to sell work. Something that's not very dynamic, no matter how well rendered, it's just not gonna give people that spark and that allure and that kind of really big excitement that they're wanting when they view your artwork. That's really gonna make it something they want to reach out, grab, and buy to take home with them. So we're going to talk about composition, therefore, today. It seemed like a lot of people had a lot of questions, but also a little bit of kind of confusion when we did our first episode. And that's okay, because this is kind of a unique subject that unless you've got regular kind of an art education on it, you might not have a lot of background in. I think that I come from it in a little bit of a different way because I do work in marketing. So I've had some design experience, I've had some illustration experience, I've also had fine art experience. So there's some things that I use from each of those types of genre when I put artwork together that makes it very different than other people's artwork. So we're gonna take kind of my spin on that and kind of things that I see and that I like to see in other people's artwork while we talk about this time. Now, while we talked about that, really when you break it down to it, compositions no much more, like the base, like do all end all of it is just a really pleasant arrangement of shapes, of colors, of tones. You're using all those facets to get across your art. That's all good composition is, okay? We talked about the golden ratio and kind of the rule of thirds. Some really archaic back there. If you didn't see that episode, go back and see it, but it's not something you have to memorize. It's not something you've got to know. Rule of thirds, we'll talk about it as we go along with this because I think that's just the easiest way for people to kind of start looking at artwork to see whether it's dynamic or not. It's just ratios that are kind of there that can be imaginary if you've got a really good eye for measurement. Not everybody does. Just like a sense of direction, not everybody does. A lot of times those go hand in hand too. You can actually get we've got, the different pieces of the Duralar that we're gonna put over it. There's nothing wrong with having that in your studio and actually putting it down and drawing over it. It's basically the clear equivalent to tracing paper, and you can actually draw right on your artwork without it sticking and actually kind of make some better decisions with your composition. So let's get started because we're going to kind of go over some things. We use Pixabay a lot on the show. So pixabay.com is a free image website that you can use any of those images on there. They don't have copyrights that are going to apply to whether or not you can actually copy the work exactly. So what I've done was pulled a bunch of different images off of there that I liked, some that I think are like perfect. Whoever did them, ideal. We'll talk about those, and then we'll talk about some that, yes, this is a nice image, but if you wanted to use this in your artwork, this is what you need to do. So we're going to kind of go over that. Now, last time we talked, I referenced the school portrait. Remember those hideous, horrible school portraits everybody had, right? That were just kind of, if this is your outline of your box here, we'll change the overhead in just a second. We've got something else that's going on that needs attention. You've got that just horrible school portrait, right? Where you've got your head, your neck, your shoulders. It's like there should be measurements behind you for that mugshot, right? The old school portraits. I mean, it wasn't like senior portraits where then they became very dynamic, right? Does everybody remember that? Where, if you're from the 80s like I am, you've got the mirror and you're looking down. You also had very big hair, but that was the 80s. That's different. That's more dynamic. That's, not just, yes, it's not your, you know, your rule of thirds, which if you split this in, there's nothing exciting. That's your face here with your eyes, your nose, your mouth. They're all stuck in that center part. This is not dynamic. This is the equivalent of somebody doing a landscape, and they've got their landscape, and in the very middle, there's a tree, right? And the line of kind of your distance is almost right in the middle, and there's just that tree. There is nothing dynamic about this. It's very boring. If you use the rule of thirds, nobody's going to really like that. It's just kind of focused in there. Now, if there's types of genres where this works, though, if you're doing something that's Art Deco, obviously it's going to be much more extravagant than this, but it's going to be balanced side by side. But I'm here to tell you, this is where if you don't have amazing rendering skills, people are going to know, because there's one thing that people can tell. Is that too light?
Yep.
Okay, sorry. Tree scribbly. Landscape. Rule of thirds.
There you go.
Here, we're going to get even crazier, even more dynamic with it. There's our rule of thirds, right? All right, so again, if you're going to do something that's very balanced, you better be darn good at rendering, because that's when people are going to notice. If something is the slightest bit kind of misaligned, and then they're not going to find that balance very dynamic, okay? So, think Instagram grid. That's what we talked about last time, right? Was the example we used. And not everybody's got that anymore, but if you started an Instagram, if you're taking pictures and you're trying to actually show your artwork online, it's a good idea to put that grid on there, because that'll kind of help you see whether it's something interesting and dynamic or not. So let's take, I think the best way to get into this is just go here. What I urge you to do, and I'm going to put up some of these images later to challenge you guys in the Jerry's Live group. If you're not on our Facebook group, we've got a Jerry's Live Facebook group, and sometimes we give homework, and sometimes people are awesome and actually do the homework and put it up. So I'm going to put up some images that I want everybody to, at the end, I'll talk about them, and then I'll go put them up in the group. I want everybody to dynamically crop down to something that is a really cool image. It doesn't have to be anything more than just a sketch if you want. We'll talk about something like that, but just to kind of see what you're learning from this if you want to participate. All right, so the cherries here. Let's put real quick. Katie, if this is too shiny, let me know. It's not too bad.
No, not bad.
Okay. All right. So if this is our outline, our dynamic, or kind of our rule of thirds here is going to go right about here, right? Not super, it's somewhat interesting. It's kind of, you want it to be kind of imbalanced to be a little bit more dynamic. So you've got some movement here, this line crosses here, so the shadow, for more or less practical purposes, is kind of in that dynamic place. It's got some nice movement. Let's do this with a brighter color that you can see easier. There's some kind of nice movement that goes around in here with the shapes, kind of repetitive, echoing, but there's a lot of just nothing very exciting going on out here. Even though this is a really basic shape, and it's decent enough for a composition, you want to take this, if you're wanting to do these, and do something different with it. Notice that the shadow kind of tapers off here, off to the side of the edge. This is where the edge of our image would be if this was kind of on your canvas that you've got here, right? What does this do? This is leading you kind of down the primrose path right off your canvas. Keep in mind when you're doing artwork and you're trying to dynamically place something, in our hemisphere, we read left to right, right? People view images the same way. Even though it's imagery, it's still cartoons. Think, in the old cartoons in the newspaper are read left to right. It's just how we've been trained since we're little tiny slips of children to go from left to right. So if you've got something that, like this, that's very heavy on the left, and that there's absolutely nothing for the eye to look at here, and you've got this either, you know, set up to, you're entering a juried show, you've got it in a show, somebody's gonna look at this, whoop, right off the page, walk right to that next painting to look at, okay? This just isn't interesting enough. But if you really like this, what I've done is taken this image, moved it slightly so that it is kind of heavier on that right balance, okay? Can you try zooming in just a little, Katie, and see if that is easier to see? I should have done it with the darker. Okay, I'm gonna put this next to it so maybe it'll focus in on that. There we go. Okay, so same cherries. What I've done is a value study. A value study is just saying these are gonna be my darkest dark areas, just like those cherries there. Okay, my shadow does not go off the side of the page. It kind of ends here. And what I've done that you can't see, but I'm gonna take this red thing is I've gone and in here done a background that comes down like this. It's like a gradient, right? So it's the darkest at the top and it gets lighter as it comes down. There's this gradient that you can kind of see there. It's not even showing up very well. Okay, is that easier to see? A little bit? No.
Use the jumbo jet.
It's not going to work on the Mylar.
It should, is it not?
No, it's not. It's an oil-based pencil. It's not going to. There we go.
So you want a Sharpie?
Nope. This will work. Okay, can everybody see that? Obviously, it's not this dark of a gradient, but and I'll put pictures of this in the Jerry's Live episode so you can actually see them. I'll take them with my camera and stick them in. But notice how that combined with these shadows, you trail along, come back up. This kind of organic shape brings you right back over so that you kind of echo the shapes round and round of those cherries, okay? So taking that for just a value study, which if there's something you're trying to kind of decide how you want to actually show it, I would really recommend doing 3 to 5 value studies at minimum. You don't have to sit and they don't have to look perfect. They can be just scribbly shapes with sketches. Try some different ones. These were with ink, so you can see them a little bit better there. There's this one on top. So I moved it over just slightly compared to that because I wanted to see what that would look like if that was moved over just a tad. All right. You can see the enhancements of this gradient. I would probably make this even a little bit darker up in here and edge it there just to make that kind of your eye circle around. Then I decided what if I didn't want that to be a horizontal one, but more vertical, and kind of wanted to center it. But in doing that, I do have a brown one will do. Notice how I've kept with kind of that dynamic line, right? This almost goes completely up, and then your eye's gonna travel back around to this. And then this is kind of dead center through those cherries, right? For that kind of more edged in kind of this area and then this area balance. See how that gives you a little bit kind of more interest than just this on a very pale surface. And this is probably just a picture of food that somebody did for a magazine or something like that. But this gives you a little bit more to look at. This is also playing with some color with these studies. I didn't know if I wanted to do this image. Would I want to stick with like a complementary one with kind of the red and the greens? I kind of liked it like this, even though this is really not the color most cherries are. I liked kind of that quinacridone with a little bit of violet going in there, and then a little bit of kind of a yellowy green with those stems. So that's something that gives you several different perspectives of just this as it's set up to kind of get that idea. Does anybody have any questions about this before we go on from here? Frida or Amanda? I know it'll take a minute to... Okay. So value studies like this are really good to do just to kind of get you in the mind frame of, it's not just where my image is, it's how color or value or shadow could enhance that and take something that might not work well if it was just white and actually help move the eye around the page. All right, last time we talked about placement. I'm going to show these one more time. These were value studies of some little jars of medium. They weren't numbered, they were numbered because the jars actually have numbers. It's a little set and they're numbered so you know what's what. But you can see how taking 3 items, randomly placing them around. I didn't want them all to be on that same plane because you've got, I don't remember, do you remember if we did an overlay of these or not? I can't remember if we did.
I think we did, but I don't think we have it anymore.
Okay. See how nicely balanced this is, kind of along this edge, but then this kind of gives something of an anchor, and then you've got the background kind of coming down like that. It's kind of a nice organic shape up in here to kind of move that eye around, but it's kind of a nice, clean, modern composition. There's a shadow here that kind of helps anchor it to this kind of line. That's one. This is another one that's a square composition that would have, if you drop those lines through, see how that kind of goes where those two meet? That's kind of close to the edge of that. It's got some shadowing that comes around in here and kind of has a gradient that goes out, where this keeps that eye going kind of around and around off these shadows and off the roundness of those bottle tops. Then we got this one that's a little closer to a traditional kind of looking, you know, less creative. I think these other two are much more dynamic. Notice how in this one the caps are a little darker, and then there's kind of that shadow around there, and then with light shadows here that with color could kind of help move it, and depending on the liquid color of these, it would add to or detract from that composition. All right, is everybody getting what we're talking about so far, do you think?
Yes, but I have a question.
Yes, please. Shoot.
I was looking through the notes, but I didn't do it fast enough.
Okay, that's fine.
These tips that you're giving us about
Yes.
all of that, does that work for abstract composition as well?
This works for anything, whether it's a landscape, whether it's an abstract, whether it's even just design, like you're trying to illustrate something for somebody. If you're illustrating pencils, like say this is, somebody's asked you to do, you know, an ad for something. And it will happen. When I was in high school, I was asked to illustrate a tiger, and it ended up being in an ad for the Detroit Tigers. I had no idea that that was like gonna happen. Thankfully, it was dynamic. It was from a cool picture, and then I put up like a little ball cap, and he had his little paw on a baseball bat. So it made for really nice lines, but you never know what somebody's gonna do for something if they want this to be able to use for an ad. So if you're doing a pencil, you don't wanna put that pencil, you know, where's our black? You don't wanna put that pencil right in the middle of your page, right? And leave it like that. Number one, always put a shadow in on something, folks. Nothing looks more like a kindergarten drawing, and I could say this because I taught K through 5, than just something that's floating out in space because no shadow is anchoring it. With those cherries, that was fine with the white because there's still a shadow. It still anchors it. It still looks realistic, right? Unless you're gonna put, you know, spirals of, you know, rocket fuel and this pencil is blasting off, it needs a shadow, okay? So this is kind of boring. It's balanced, but that's not very exciting. We'll say there's some packaging. Like they're gonna have the tin of pencils, you know, over here in a little thing, then add some other things, an eraser, or, a little pencil sharpener, something to make that kind of dynamic. Use your overlays while you're working. There's nothing wrong with that. It's a tool nobody ever has to see that you've used. Yes?
A couple of the YouTube viewers are curious on what the ultimate purpose is of making it so dynamic. Is the point to keep the eye on the painting so that people don't leave too fast, or just to make the piece pop, or?
It's okay, so that's a good question. What is the purpose of this long term? Is it just to keep a viewer? Is it to add interest and make it more dynamic so somebody wants to buy it? What this speaks to long term, in the long run, is your maturity as an artist. Everybody draws the little person with pancake hands and sticks for fingers when they're like 3 and 4, right? Everybody's got a niece or a nephew or a kid or somebody that's drawn it. That's where we all start. The difference is how observant you are as a person, even if you're a little tiny kid, to your death, and how you use that method of observing and the growth over time of learning skills and tools and techniques that you keep adding to your repertoire. Not like, oh, this is cool, I used this on one painting, ta-da, I'm done. Because you know what? Everybody's seen an artwork in a museum or in like, say it's a Van Gogh book and it's a retrospective, and you're paging through it and there's beautiful painting on beautiful painting, and you see a couple and you're like, yeah. It's not the color. You don't know what it is that makes you go, but there's something that makes you go, Well, guess what? It's probably the composition, and you just don't have the background in it to realize that's what it is, and that's what's not working, and that's what's not successful. It's about adding more and more success to your imagery as an artist. It's about that maturation of honing and developing those skills, just like becoming better at drawing something realistic, where your drawing skills get better. You don't have all the smudges, you're not smearing with your fingers to do your shading and blending. It's the same thing. It's just your visual acuity and ability to represent the object growing. Does that make sense? And if you're playing the drinking game, this is where we take the shot. We have some viewers that jokingly say, when I say that, it's time to drink. So, all right, so let's look at a couple more items. And you know what, I'm gonna take this because then we'll be able to see the outline a little bit easier, I think, and go from there. This is a very successful work, in my opinion. What they're lacking is either some shadowing up here, like some color, right? It's not that you can't take something and keep it a nice, clean white background, but maybe punch up some of these shadows and give it something really light. You could do like a pale lemon yellow to make this, you know, almost to the point of a yellow green, to make some of these other colors pop and to add more kind of weighted interest to this. But I mean, if you take this and you look at it with the, I mean, this is masterfully done. I really like this piece.
Hey, this brings me to a question.
Yes.
So we've looked at a couple of different things where there's been 3 or odd numbers.
Yes, we're gonna look at something else here in a second.
Okay. Because the question was, is it better to have odd numbers than even numbers?
Yes, it is. Although what you can do, like with this, where it's got, yes, this is even numbers, your odd numbers, you could take it and make it even, take something like this out, push one further back. Okay, that juxtaposition of foreground and background is where you can still successfully do 2 objects, because you're making a difference in this size versus this size is a little too similar, but if you pushed it back further and did it at an angle or whatever, you could play with it. The juxtaposition of difference is what adds to that interest. Okay? Another one that I just want to show that I think is very successful. Look at how beautiful this is. We'll probably better do it with a white. But to show that, huh?
You have white?
Yeah.
Yes, show that that background's much more dynamic. This is right where our line's gonna go. Look at that. Look at the beauty of how this person has taken this image. Look at this beautiful interest here, here. This is kind of the shape here. Look how nicely that floats. Now you've got where this kind of goes away some. The beauty of what will make this even stronger, you've got a nice you know, red and yellow kind of color scheme, or a red, yellow, and green color scheme, I would take this and do something. You've got the complementaries here with the red and green. You've got the yellow. Instead of black, I would make this something like a dioxazine violet, where you can just barely see that it's violet. Maybe it wouldn't even register to the viewer, but it would make this look less kind of gold yellow and make it pop more, right? You could play with that. Color can make a, you know, this is a very beautiful composition. Using color can make that composition pop even more. Okay, this is like really nice, but you could really wow it with that color. And that's why we talk about the color with the composition. You know, we've done all these shows on color theory, because again, these are all tools that are ultimately going to build in your repertoire until it's like a cascade effect of that you're just awesome and can't be stopped as an artist, right? Only Katie has drank enough coffee to she was smiling with enthusiasm. The others are like, we could do this. All right, we've used this before, this image of this little, I think it's a nectarine. Okay, I love this, and I love the shape of this, and I love these shadows and the color play in this. I think it's absolutely beautiful. This is where we're gonna come in with this other kind of thing that's really helps with dynamic cropping, okay? I take 4 pieces of watercolor paper or illustration paper or something, and I'm missing one of them. Where did it go? That's not good. I had 4. It's probably in the hallway somewhere. So let's take another piece of paper. What I would do with this image is this makes for a very nice composition. You know what these things are from the shapes and the colors behind it, but they're not your main focus. Now, this may look like it's absolutely just like up front. I'll just use another piece of paper, the back of it, Katie.
Oh,
It fell down somewhere. Yeah, I'll be fine. Okay, so let's look at this really quick. Where are we? We're following our rule of thirds lines, right? Even though this is dead center, look at this beautiful shape. Look at how there's this, you can't see it with the overlay, but this beautiful kind of like negative shape where that fruit falls away from that cut edge. That's very beautiful. You've got that shape. You've got these nice kind of echoing rounded lines that are going to pull the eye up and bring it around and keep with this color, re-emphasizing looking at this form. This makes this much more simplistic than that whole picture with all of those pieces of fruit together. But look how beautiful that, although you're still using the rule of thirds, you're centering it somewhat with that pit. The pit becomes this kind of beautiful star of the attraction, but all of these nice kind of organic shapes really help echo that rule of thirds and move the eye around the work. Thank you. I know I'm gonna find it when I walk back to my office. It's just gonna be sad and laying there in the hall.
That or it's stuck in one of the other
Yes.
cabinets somewhere.
Yes, exactly.
Wouldn't be the first time.
Okay, this is gorgeous. And this I would leave as is, but I would take this. This is such a nice, beautiful dark here. I would make some of these values here even darker, I think. If you squint, notice, everybody squint and look at this. And I'm sorry for those of you who this confuses. This is dark, there's a little bit of dark here, there's some there. The rest of it is pretty boring and the same value, right? Value means white is the lightest value, black would be your darkest value. There's a lot of stuff in here that looks way too similar if you squint, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So what you're gonna need to do is,
Lose a lot of it.
yes, is really bump color up even harder. Okay, you could take these, you could take all the little kind of stamens in here and make those red. Okay, you could make some of this a washed out, much paler yellow, and then make these golder, brighter, darker. You could integrate even a little bit of burnt umber or burnt sienna into it to help with shadows, where it just takes some of the heat out of the color, but it increases the value with this green, that's a really nice one. I would leave that in. You could do something with the background. You could make it much darker up here. You could make it much lighter here so that there's this beautiful role reversal that happens when you put a light color and a dark color next to each other. They vibrate almost, if that makes sense. It's just like taking complementaries and placing them next to each other. That line becomes very electric visually. So it's a really interesting kind of technique that you can use. Making that dark, making this light underneath kind of really helps sculpt that effect of the flower, and it gives you a nice opposition that really cuts that outline nice and clean. And it doesn't have to be like picture perfect. It doesn't need to be like absolutely black there and then really light there. You want there to be some very sharp edges and you want some softer blending. But that's how you take something like this that's already this beautiful composition and you enhance it and build on it with color. Because right now as it is, it's beautiful looking if you just look at it from the start, but squinting, it loses some of that interest with the value change, if that makes sense. Does anybody need me to draw that grid work over that, or is everybody starting to kind of see the grid work? If any,
do it.
Huh? Do it? Okay, so if anybody wants to see it, we can do it really quick.
Never hurt.
No. And I've got some other artworks that we're going to talk about,
Do you
how
have
you
a
crop.
landscape?
Yes.
Okay. Someone was asking how it works with landscape, so we'll
Okay,
go
whoops,
do
this,
that.
this is actually a little lower. I botched the line. The line would be right there. Okay. See? This is probably a little more over here, but look at how nice that rule of thirds, it lays kind of right on there. Even though this is in the center, it's up higher along this line. These are our dynamic lines. Okay, and then there's a lot of nice visual weight here. This is in the center, but man, because this is so kind of flowing and elegant, you don't really notice it as in the center, you know? Because there's that nice kind of cantilever of balance. All right, let's look at the landscape. Well, I'll show you this one real quick. We don't need to put a grid over this. This is perfect as is, as the color is, as anything. This is nice and vibrant right up against that edge, and a little bit back here, and some little pops, and then very soft and fluid here. I wouldn't even take that and make it darker in here, because the beauty of this is the softness with that little bit of color transition. That's just so nice there. So that's the whole piece. That's very, very beautiful. All right, let me find that landscape real quick. All right, at first glance, although the colors are really beautiful in this, and this is why I included this one, because the problem with landscaping, unless you get some really amazing pictures, you're going around looking and you're looking and you're looking and you're looking. And so many people go out and try to do landscapes and then they get lost in the kind of, because you don't have that cropping tool. Has everybody seen those little kind of squares that they hold up, right? Your viewfinder that the landscape artists do. They're trying to look at that and determine it and crop it. You see the film, hold it right there, darling. Yes, oh yes, you're right. It's the same kind of a thing. This is your landscape finder here. I don't like any of this down here. That's very dull and boring. This would have to go. What I like here is this nice color play with that darkness. Okay, now I'm breaking a rule here, and again, rules are made to be broken. You don't have to always follow. This doesn't have to be like, you know, a religious mantra where it's either right or it's wrong. This can be played with. Your take, this would be over here a little bit more. Your own take on it is what is going to make this exciting. Now, okay, so this is close to that dynamic line. Okay, we've got kind of that there, right? But that's very boring. Tree, that would go. I would take that out. What's really beautiful are the echoes of this kind of snow here on some ice, right? This is like a winter landscape. I would punch those up so they're a little more edged and violet here. I wouldn't make them whiter. I would probably make them even softer. Okay, more of a grade value. In here, I would punch the yellows and the oranges up, as well as right in here, so that you're creating kind of this circular effect. Okay, so it's kind of pushing that view there. And then with these, I would graduate this and make it darker, darker, darker as it comes up here, so that that night sky and down a little bit here gives kind of another dome, so to speak, of kind of the color of this and the rounding out of this.
Kind of making a natural vignette.
Very much so. That's the perfect word for that. Okay, you can play with those colors. You don't, this is the beauty of being an artist. Just because you perceive it this way in a picture doesn't mean that's what you have to do. You can change those colors. You can change, you know, the cropping. You can change even some of the cloud shapes. Just remember, with a landscape and with a water feature, this is a mirror reflection of this. If those clouds come like that, they're gonna come like that down there. That's the one thing people always forget, especially if they're putting little buildings or a dock or things like that in it. They try to just do it very square with it. If there's a little bit of waves, it's gonna move that image around. Really pay attention to that. That's something that's very hard to fudge. So that's something that you may have to kind of deal with. But that's how I would do something like that. I've actually taken this one and done a little watercolor with it, and I did the cropping with it in just a sketchbook a long time ago, and I really, really liked how it turned out, and I did make that a lot darker. And with this, instead of the black, I made that dioxazine with just a tiny bit of kind of this cold blue in it to soften it so it's not as dark and as hard as that, and that really helped change that kind of scene, the feel of that scene as well. Okay? All right, so now here's some trickier things. Okay, I've got some antique cars because this is a very good, these are great for cropping. I love the colors in this, and I thought actually long and hard about doing an artwork of this, and I've held on to it for a long time because I didn't know what was bothering me about it. I've been racking my brain and can't, just something looks weird about it. And I realized in this show prep, I wasn't even gonna use it, but I realized what it was. So I wanna show you guys so you kind of understand where I'm seeing this. Okay, let's.
Throwback one.
It's from Cuba. Well, Cuba's got all old cars, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's these beautiful antique cars that are kept in a really nice shape there. All right. So here's our lines. And I thought about doing this just as this picture. This is what I noticed that I can't stand about it. And it's just the fact of the perspective as it is because of how the car's parked and the person standing kind of up over this car, obviously, right here, because we're seeing more of the top of the hood and stuff. But look how further up the alley, are these angles, right? And then this is coming down like this. See the angle this is coming down at? But then this, it doesn't look like a perspective that makes sense to me. Can everybody see kind of what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. This looks very slopey versus this. These are these beautiful, hard, beautiful, crisp lines. I love the color in here. I love the crispness of that. And then you've got these beautiful organic shapes, but it looks like it's going bleh and melting off the side of the artwork. So this is what, huh?
Can you move it over just a smidge so they can see?
Which way?
Towards the car.
Okay.
Because you couldn't really see the.
Oh, okay. There we go. All right. Can everybody see that?
Yeah.
Okay. And everybody can see those lines of what I'm saying are going down, right?
Mm-hmm.
If I color this in, that's going down. That's leading your eye off the page, right? It's all these beautiful lines. You don't keep looking back up here. It's going blip. So, taking this off. If I was gonna do this, and I'm still considering it because I was playing with it, show you guys, I don't have to have the whole car. The beauty is in the shapes, to me, of this, in these old cars. It's not in the, I have to have the whole car in the image, or enough of the car even to know what it is. There's two possibilities that I would take with this to make it really unique and interesting. See how putting that on there, I'm gonna do this so it's blocked out. See how suddenly that's not drawing your eye like down at this weird angle because you're not seeing the organic shape kind of sloping? It's got more of these now within here, these upright lines with here. Okay, there's lines here in this. There's kind of that line there with these lines where it's emphasizing more the upright now as sloping, sloping,
So I have a
sloping.
question about that. That's my own, I have a question about that.
Yes.
So, do you think part of it is that it's going down from left to right instead of up from left to right? Like
Yes,
if you flip
that's a big part of it.
Yeah.
You could flip it, but it's still weighted very heavily
Yeah.
with all of that because this starts getting really exciting design. You keep looking, and this goes from light to dark, so it's going to draw you that way anyway, even though it is, you know, right to left. And I think if you flipped it, you'd still have that same issue. It's just, it's too, which you could change the colors some, but I just think that it's not going to be as successful as that. That shows kind of the beauty and excitement of the car and just the antiquity and the uniqueness. But personal choice, I'm making this about that and not the car itself.
Yeah.
The other kind of vision of that I saw would even be something like in here. Although this still kind of goes down, I don't have these, I would take this part out. I would maybe make this just maybe an abstract color because this to me is too square, and then that's going to emphasize how round that is going down. And just almost do this like an abstract. See the warm and the cool. I play those off of each other and make it more about the shapes of it than necessarily can you read that it's a Buick whatever, you know? Does that make a little bit of sense? Because if you like that and you want to do that whole thing, you could tilt it and get rid of that line, right? Or even change the line so that it fits the up and down, or just get some other photo references of, there's so many pictures of antique cars out there. This is a beautiful one, and I love the hot and cool colors on it. You've got all this mumbo jumbo of this car behind it and all that. And because this is so cool, and then these are nice warm tones, I love that. And I actually love where this is cropped with this tire here and kind of that dark negative space of the interior of the car. But because there's only this for the lightness over here, that starts with the rest of this gobbledygook, kind of starts blotting it out. So I think what I would do with this, because compositionally, I want you guys to see, I think it's very nice.
It hurts my heart to see that car in that condition.
I know, but you know what? There's a beauty in that kind of rusted. It's like finding bones in the woods. It's that kind of almost paleological kind of. Katie's like, you lost me now. Okay, so
I get it.
So see how nice that is? It's got this interest here. It's got this kind of echoing of these beautiful kind of organic shapes. A little bit down here off kilter. What I would do is take this truck out completely. And I'm not saying lighter over here, but I'm just blocking it out so you can see it. See how there's this nice little kind of clean area here? Look what happens when you get rid of it. And this is why I'm saying do these value studies. See what changes. Look how all of a sudden that's a nice light balance to this. What I would probably do is keep the driveway up to about here and then just have, there's these trees here, have a line of kind of trees that go along here. I don't mind the red kind of negative shape up here. You could make the trees kind of look like that in a very grayed out area with the concrete up to there, just so that's kind of on that line. And then the nice blue sky would get rid of all this kind of crappy crud that's up here. Look how nicely this plays off these blues here. That blue is echoed and echoed and echoed in that cool thing. Make it that same nice blue or just a slight value higher. Can you guys see where that's, what's funny? My
My nose is
gobbledygook,
cold.
my technical terms, huh?
My nose is cold.
It is chilly in here. Your nose is cold, but like a puppy, your heart is warm.
Aw.
All right. Now this, you could have fun with because there's no color. So you could really play with this if you wanted to add color to the car. Or you could keep it these nice gray values. Look what this is, I mean, this is pretty nice in and of itself. I turned it like this and was like, if you took that and cropped it, that could almost be, to me, you can do abstract things from realistic things and take those shapes. Look, if you cropped that out like that, have that kind of nice shape, and you could crop a little coming over here or here, or all sorts of ways to make this very interesting but very abstract. Because who's going to know that's a car on its side, right? See how that's kind of a really nice kind of juxtapositions of shapes that would be right on those kind of lines there, where it would make it very dynamic. Or you could do it that way. You could even do something where this is just a really beautiful composition in and of itself.
It goes to say something about the car makers too, considering that you could do all that.
There was so much
they
art
had
in that.
Successful.
That's why I love
composition.
old cars. You don't see cars like that now. It's very rare that you see anything that is even kind of interesting. But look at how beautiful that is, how beautiful those shapes are. Look at how nice even that is, right? Can everybody see? Do I need to put the overlay on there to be able to see kind of how that falls and how interesting that is? I don't think so. I think people are starting to get it, don't you think?
Yeah.
These are invaluable. They're just pieces of paper. Scrap paper that you've got. They can
I
be
think people think
white,
that-
they can be black.
Well, I think people think that to be a good artist, you don't need to use those tools, when in fact it's
Oh,
the complete opposite. It's
way more
using
important.
all the tools in your
It's like
Toolbox.
trying to do figure sculpture with no calipers to
Right.
measure from a real live model. You're not going to get it right if you don't have calipers to go back and forth and back and forth. Okay, so this I love, but oh my gosh, yawn. This is so. I mean, it's beautiful reflections, but blah blah blah. So how would you make that like? See how there's that beautiful pop of red up here in that flag? And you could even go like that, because this is going to keep drawing your eye back and forth. And these keep pushing this back down, back around. This flag angles it back down into that line. These go back into here. This keeps moving back and forth. You've got the red, you've got the red, you've got the red. You could even take this car back here. You could do red, yellow, and blue. You could make that like a really nice like navy or something really dark back there. And then pop the sky in with a nice like cerulean or something. Pop up this color just a little bit. This is obviously was taken on a cloudy day. You could make this so beautiful as a primary color scheme, just like popping those colors up. Isn't that nice? Everybody gets it without the grid work. That is like right there, right?
Yes.
And the more you start thinking like this, the more you're gonna see there were literally hundreds of cars in there that I was like, next. Because once you start developing that eye for composition and for something that's really unique and extremely dynamic, you're already gonna filter that stuff out ahead of time for yourself, right? Okay, this one is the Piece de Resistance. This reminds me of a Georgia O'Keeffe painting a little bit, and it's not, I mean, the mountains here and you can tell it's somewhere, New Mexico, Arizona, Texas, somewhere out there. But this has a very landscape-like quality to that with the rust. This looks like canyon red, right? It looks like the walls of a canyon. Don't like this car over here. What I think I would do, crop in, because this is a little too much down here. And I would leave the rest of this. I would go and find a really nice image for myself of the canyons where it's like the buttes, where it's that really nice kind of rocky outcropping that just pops up like that, right? That has some of these really nice colors in here. And I would make that from about that line come up and over like that, so it would be on that dynamic line, right? Let's put one of these on so you can see. I'm going to draw on.
What if they want you to post that picture as homework?
That was one of the pictures I was posting. But see, I shouldn't tell them what the cheat is to this, but I'm going to, because they'll have to go find the imagery and all that to make this work. Okay, so with this like that, tell I'm getting tired because it's getting sloppy. All right, see how that's nicely lined up with this? I would have that canyon thing come over maybe up here like that, or even down here where it kind of came up the top right along this line. But you would need to find something where it's got a good kind of forces that view away. It's from the right angle, which there's plenty of photo things out there. And then this is bluish and greenish. I would probably change the sky so that it was slightly darker value back here than this. You'd need to get your sun at the right angle. So this looks like maybe a morning sun kind of coming in here from where these shapes are here. And that's really kind of sun-baked back there. It would be the light source would be the trick. Because that's what's going to, it's funny because even though it's the composition that's going to make or break it, people can tell if it's two different light sources. And I'm going to go out on a limb and probably make people sad, but who's the guy, Bob Timberlake, who paints all those little cottages and all that? Like 19 different light sources. I can appreciate that guy's perspective is spot on, but A, it looks like frosting, and B, 19 different friggin' light sources in each work. And now that I've said that, every time you're going to see Bob Timberlake, you're going to realize there's all these different light sources, which is what happens when you don't have references that you're working from, when you're using your creativity and making it up, but you can find ways to get references on things to get light right too. So, so yes, are there any questions? No questions at all. I'm not sure if I've either given enough information or just confused the heck out of everybody.
No, they seem to be getting it. They're all kind of.
Okay. Use these as tools. Either we've got pads of Duralar. They also make rolls. There would be enough of this for a lifetime if you got this. And I thought it was going to be too shiny on camera, but it's not once it's flat.
No, it's fine.
You could use this on big paintings, but this is a tool that's meant to save you time. So many people don't bother doing a sketch first. They know what they want, or they have some photo references. They get really excited because the fun part is actually doing the painting or the drawing, right?
Also, if you don't want to buy Duralar, like I have my phone camera set all the time, so it has.
Yes.
And then you start seeing it without.
Yes. Or if you have an iPad, or even
You can draw on it with apps on the iPad and stuff like that.
even if you have in a pinch before, I've used crystal seal bags.
Yeah.
Well,
I was
Because-
gonna suggest this
Because
for
you can put that over that, and that's fine. But it's a good thing to have, especially if like something looks weird and you're not sure what it is. That's the time to pull the grid out and see. Just like that one thing, I didn't know why that picture, and I've held onto that picture for like a year and a half. Yes, Frida.
Rachel is curious if the headlight isn't a little too big for the composition.
This?
Yeah.
No, I don't think so. I mean, you could alter it. You could make it smaller or larger, but remember the photographer is like right here. This is the closest thing to him.
Let's give you your perspective.
Your starting point.
Yes, because if you make it way larger or way smaller, people that know anything about cars may potentially not. And this to somebody that's a car fancier, and you know what, people, if you like cars and you like to do this kind of stuff, people will pay some money because they can't afford to go buy that GTO that's souped up that somebody's selling for 30 grand, but they can buy a painting of it. And there's people that collect that stuff. I had no idea how big that market was. So sometimes it's those little nuances that are going to make a difference for somebody that's viewing your work. Okay. There's something I was saying before that, and now I can't remember what it was. The painting and the actual art is the fun part, but taking this and doing some value studies first, keep it to 5 minutes of value study. 5 minutes plus 5 value studies is only 25 minutes of your time wasted than you taking that fresh, beautiful, ready to work on canvas and you put a drawing on and something looks wrong and you erase it off, and then something still looks wrong and then you erase it off and you go back and forth and back, or worse yet, you know it looks wrong, but you're like, I'll somehow correct that in the painting there, right? Because we've all done that, haven't we? To just be like, no, I'll fix it. And then you're 3/4 of the way through the painting and you don't want to go back and take the time it takes to paint something back out and do it. Those 5 minutes are precious doing those little value studies, and that are going to give you that composition and help you make some choices towards making that artwork great from the start, not hoping and praying that it will in the end. All right, any last questions? Hopefully this is helping you guys. And you know what? I'm sorry. I know the color theory, and I'm saying this from having been there and done that. This part is not the fun part of art. This part is the part where it's like, sometimes you don't get it, and sometimes it's frustrating, and it takes time. But this is also learning, and just like if you're learning a foreign language, it's in the nuances, and you can learn it really wrong unless you get the foundations built from the beginning, okay? So I will put some images in the Jerry's Live group. Do with them what you will, be creative, go super close up, change some stuff, use color for something that's more maybe boring and benign to take that artwork and actually alter it. What do you think? This one, how about the flower, that really pretty poppy? What do you think?
Yeah, that was good. I like that one.
And I'll pick 2 or 3 other ones. Just take what one speaks to you and
Maybe the
give it a whirl.
too?
Yeah, sure.
There's like a couple different.
Yeah, and you know what? I had a landscape on my desk that I did that with to test some acrylics, and I forgot it. So I'll put pictures of that up in there and to show how I changed that landscape to make it a little bit more dynamic from the image that I had. All right, well, thank you guys for tuning in. Hopefully you learned something. You can apply this. And the Jerry's Live group, if you're not a member, go to Facebook groups, hit Jerry's Live. You have to answer the question to get accepted into the group. We want to make sure you're not a robot. And it's a great community. We've got a lot of people, and people post work that they're working on or questions, or if they're having problems. It's a great way if you don't have a place in town or where you can have a critique and you can get feedback on your artwork to actually get some helpful, useful information from people. Yes, Frida?
Sorry,
No.
back to this last question. The brown marker, is that a dry erase marker or permanent?
No, it's not. It's not.
Can you use a dry erase marker?
You probably could. Just test it on the stuff first to make sure it comes up. But it should work because this stuff is what I think most teachers use for the old overhead projectors. Again, showing my age.
Wet erase markers.
Yes. So take care, and we will see you guys next Tuesday. Bye-bye.